To keep yourself updated, subscribe to Indigolearn and click the bell icon and download our app OneFin to start learning on the go.
So my dear students, let's now complete the balance points in section 13, that is about section 13 subsection 12 and section 13 subsection 13. Let's discuss these 2 points and then close with the discussion about section 13, and of course we'll also close the topic of place of supply. Now listen. When we are talking about section 13 subsection 12, let me tell you an interesting point, that is section 13 subsection 12 deals with the concept of place of supply in case of OIDAR services. And let me tell you, my dear friends, OIDAR stands for Online Information Database Access and Retrieval Services. Come on, listen. I repeat one more time. Listen carefully. OIDAR stands for Online Information Database Access and Retrieval Services. Other words, online there is some information or there is some database which we can access and we can retrieve that data. Retrieve means we can pull that data. Let's take an example of Amazon Prime. A lot of people have got Amazon Prime subscription. They love to watch movies. Now my straight question to you, do you really think that when you click play movie, somebody is playing a movie for you at the background? Answer is no. That movie is already stored on the cloud. Other words, that data is stored online. The moment you click play, the video will start playing for you. Same logic applies even in case of YouTube videos. And let me also tell you, the same logic applies even in case of Indigolearn videos. When you want to watch Indigolearn videos, be it app or be it laptop or any mode, you make payment online and you start watching classes. In that case, what will happen? Already the classes are stored online. And the moment you make the payment, you can access the data and watch the content. Correct, my dear friends? So basically, the kind of service what Indigolearn is giving is nothing but online information database access and retrieval services. Nothing but OIDAR services. OIDAR service is such service where it is fully automated. Now, some very interesting point I'll tell you before I talk about section 13 subsection 12. That is, I'm talking about something known as section 14 of IGST Act. Now, the interesting point is that section 14 of IGST Act specifies that if OIDAR outside India, for example, let's say Netflix is providing OIDAR services and Netflix is basically sitting outside India, and law says if OIDAR is providing services to NTOR, which stands for non-taxable online recipient. Who is that? We'll talk in detail. Don't worry. Listen now. If OIDAR is supplying services to NTOR, then OIDAR is liable to pay GST. And if OIDAR is supplying service to any person other than NTOR, then recipient is liable to pay GST because of provisions of reverse charge mechanism. I repeat one more time. In general, we know that supplier is liable to pay GST, but in case of certain specific transactions, supplier is not liable to pay GST. Recipient is liable to pay GST, which is technically known as reverse charge mechanism. Now, what law told very clearly is that if OIDAR is supplying service to NTOR, then OIDAR is liable to pay GST. And if OIDAR is supplying service to any person other than NTOR, then recipient is liable to pay GST under reverse charge mechanism. And as I just told you the full form, NTOR stands for non-taxable online recipient. General meaning is that maybe an individual or maybe any person who is unregistered and taken some service for personal use. It is not taken for business purpose, it is taken for personal purpose. He is called as NTOR. We'll talk the definition in detail now. So listen now. So generally NTOR is somebody who is an unregistered person who has taken something for personal use, not for business use. For example, if we would like to watch movies on Netflix, let's say one person, Mr. A, who is a salaried employee, who is unregistered person, he has taken subscription on Netflix to watch some wonderful movies and TV shows on Netflix. Now he made the payment online for watching the programs on Netflix. So simple words, Netflix is supplying service to Mr. A. Here, very clearly, Mr. A is a NTOR, that is nothing but Mr. A is a non-taxable online recipient. And law has specified that when OIDAR is supplying service to non-taxable online recipient, then OIDAR is liable to pay GST. But if OIDAR is supplying service to any person other than non-taxable online recipient, then recipient is liable to pay GST as per provisions of reverse charge mechanism given by Section 5 of IGST Act. So now listen very clearly here. So when Netflix is giving service to Mr. A, who is liable to pay GST? Netflix is liable to pay GST. And in Section 14, they have clearly specified that if OIDAR is supplying service to NTOR, then OIDAR is liable to pay GST. And one special point they have given is that if OIDAR does not have physical presence in India, that means they do not have an office in India or establishment in India or a setup in India, highly possible. Lot of companies are operating in India without having an office in India. They are sitting in foreign country and doing huge business. It's all the power of technology. So listen now. So law has specified that if OIDAR does not have physical presence in India, then the representative in India is liable to pay GST. So whoever is the OIDAR's representative in India, that person is liable to pay GST. But there is also a possibility, my dear friends, that OIDAR does not have physical presence in India and there is also no representative in India. Everything is being done from foreign country. In India there is no representative also. Then law specified, in general, if OIDAR does not have physical presence in India, then the representative in India is liable to pay GST. However, if there is no such representative, then OIDAR must appoint a representative and make him liable to pay GST. That means, in simple terms, if OIDAR is not having physical presence in India, then law is telling whoever is representative, he is liable. And if there is no representative, then OIDAR should appoint somebody in India, make him representative and make him responsible person for the purpose of payment of GST. And all this story will come only when OIDAR is supplying service to non-taxable online recipient. Because if OIDAR is supplying service to a person other than non-taxable online recipient, then OIDAR is not liable to pay GST. Recipient is liable to pay GST as per provisions of RCM. Correct, right? So if OIDAR is liable to pay, then what we look at? OIDAR is liable to pay. But if they do not have physical presence in India, their representative is liable to pay. And if there is no such representative, they must appoint a representative and make him liable to pay. Getting clarity, guys? Now, let's look at in detail what is the definition for OIDAR service and what is the definition for non-taxable online recipient. See now, Section 2, Clause 17 of IGST Act defines what is the meaning of OIDAR services, which has clearly defined something like this. Come on, see now. OIDAR services means services whose delivery is mediated by information technology over the internet or an electronic network, and the nature of which renders their supply essentially automated. That is what I clearly told you. It should be an automated process and involving minimal human intervention. So there is not much of human intervention. So let's say, for example, you want to purchase my classes. You make payment to me online. Then I physically sit and activate your lecture, and I am sending you the physical books and by email, or I am sending the documents through a soft copy or hard copy form. Then definitely human interface is there to a greater extent, and it is not complete technology. Then we don't say that it is OIDAR, because the logic is very simple. In order to call it as OIDAR, it should be completely automated. It should be purely based on technology, and data is already stored online, which can be accessed and retrieved, and it involves minimal human intervention. Online live class for you, then definitely there is tremendous human intervention. It cannot be called as OIDAR service. But for recorded lectures, which is already stored on the cloud and it's completely automated, then we treat it as OIDAR service. See now, I repeat one more time. OIDAR services means services whose delivery is mediated by information technology over the internet or an electronic network, and the nature of which renders their supply essentially automated and involving minimal human intervention and impossible to ensure in the absence of information technology. That means this kind of service cannot be given without information technology, and includes electronic services such as number 1, advertising on internet, online ads. We know that whenever we open a YouTube channel or we want to watch a video on YouTube, we first keep getting ads and we keep searching for keypad option. Correct, right? Exactly. So first point is what? Advertising on the internet. Second, providing cloud services. Cloud services is nothing but online data storage, for example Google Drive or OneDrive. Third, provision of e-books, online books, where we can access the content online, read the books online. Provision of e-books, movies, music. We have got so many apps like Savan, Wink Music, Spotify, whatnot. So many are there. Come on. E-books, movie, music, software and other intangibles through telecommunication network or internet. Then, providing data or information retrievable or otherwise to any person in electronic form through a computer network. Next, online supplies of digital content such as movies, television shows, music and like. Example already I told you, Amazon Prime, Netflix, whatnot. Then, digital data storage and also online gaming. These are the examples for OIDAR services what we get to see in real-time basis. So this definition of OIDAR services is given by section 217 of IGST Act. So now let's look at definition given by 216 of IGST Act, which defines what is and who is non-taxable online recipient. See now, non-taxable online recipient means any government, local authority, governmental authority. So what is covered there? Any government, local authority, governmental authority. And let me tell you what is the definition of governmental authority. That is also given in the bottom. See that. Governmental authority means an authority or board or any other body set up by an act of parliament or a state legislature or established by any government. But the catch point there is with 90% or more participation by way of equity or control to carry out any function entrusted to a municipality under Article 243W of the Constitution. So the holding percentage is what, my dear friends? 90%. That's the interesting part you have to observe there. Come on, see now. So going back to the definition, non-taxable online recipient means any government, local authority, governmental authority, an individual or any other person not registered, that means an unregistered person or any other person not registered and receiving OIDAR services in relation to any purpose other than commerce, industry or any other business or profession located in taxable territory. You have to observe one beautiful point there, that we are talking about NTOR means any government, local authority, governmental authority, an individual or any other person who is not registered and receiving OIDAR services. What services is receiving? OIDAR services in relation to any purpose other than commerce, industry or any other business or profession. So directly, indirectly they are telling somebody who is taking some OIDAR services for personal purpose, because they use the word other than commerce, industry or any other business or profession. So that's where I clearly told you the concept that when Netflix is supplying service to Mr. A, then who is liable to pay? Netflix is liable to pay because Mr. A is regarded as NTOR, because an individual who is unregistered person and taking service for a purpose other than commerce, industry, business or profession. So going back to section 14, section 14 clearly says if OIDAR is supplying service to NTOR, then OIDAR is liable to pay GST. And if OIDAR is supplying service to person other than NTOR, then recipient is liable to pay GST under provisions of reverse charge mechanism. And whenever we say that OIDAR is liable to pay GST, if OIDAR does not have physical presence in India, then their representative in India is liable to pay GST. And if there is no such representative, they must appoint a representative and make him liable to pay GST. And these all points are given by section 14 of IGST Act. In fact, my dear friends, section 13 subsection 12 deals with the concept of place of supply related to OIDAR services. But it is my utmost duty to tell you what is the concept of OIDAR. That is the reason why I have taken you to section 14 of IGST Act. So now let's look at section 13.12, which deals with place of supply for OIDAR services. So when we start discussion about the concept of place of supply in relation to OIDAR services, please do keep in mind that it is given by section 13 subsection 12. Don't get confused. Section 14 deals with the concept of OIDAR and 13 subsection 12 deals with place of supply in relation to OIDAR services. Where law has clearly given that we are talking about place of supply when the person supplying OIDAR services is outside India. That is, going back to our example, Netflix is supplying service to Mr. A. Correct, right? Mr. A is in India, Netflix is outside India. In this particular transaction, we are talking about what is the place of supply. And law has specified that in general, the place of supply will be the location of recipient of services. Other words, the place of supply is the location of Mr. A. So wherever recipient is located, that becomes the place of supply. But here, there is one wonderful catch point. That is, how will government know the location of Mr. A? The possibility point is very simple, that at the time of signing up for Netflix, at the time of making payment for Netflix, whatever address Mr. A gives, that will be the basis to find out where does Mr. A belong to. But the practical problems are, lot of times people access some content online, maybe YouTube, maybe Netflix, or maybe any kind of gaming portals or anything, but they may not disclose their identity. For example, Mr. A, instead of giving his actual address, he has given some fake address. He is actually belonging to Gujarat, India, but instead of giving Gujarat, India address, he gave it as London, UK address. Intentionally. Possible, right? Highly possible. So where location of recipient he is not giving at the time of taking that service. So law specified that in general, place of supply is the location of recipient of services. However, if any two conditions are satisfied, out of 7 conditions given in the law, they have specified that if any 2 conditions are satisfied, then we treat that the location of recipient is deemed to be in taxable territory. Other words, the location of recipient is deemed to be in India if any 2 conditions out of 7 conditions are satisfied. Now, what are the 7 conditions? Let's look at that. Very interesting conditions. Something like they told you are using some cell phone to access some content, and in that cell phone SIM card is there. That SIM card belongs to India. For example, Airtel SIM card you are using or Jio SIM card you are using. Highly possible, right? Or whenever you are making a payment, you are using some debit card or credit card which is issued in India. So these kind of conditions are given, and they are given some 7 points, and out of its 7 points, if you satisfy any 2 conditions, then done, then finished. Then it is treated that location of recipient of services is deemed to be in taxable territory. Come on, let's see now. The 7 conditions are: number 1, recipient gives an Indian address through internet. That means he only gave Indian address. Condition 2, payment is settled by an Indian credit card or debit card or any other card. Then third condition, recipient has an Indian billing address. Don't confuse yourself. First point, third point is different. First point they told recipient has given Indian address. Third point we are talking about recipient has an Indian billing address. Billing address is different. His address is different. That's where they gave the third condition as recipient has an Indian billing address. Fourth condition, computer or other device used by the recipient has an Indian IP address. I hope you know that IP stands for Internet Protocol Address. In general, we have got a concept of 192.168.1.1 or 1.0, 1.100. Like that, we keep finding IP address. So they have clearly given fourth condition, the computer or other device used by recipient, it has got an Indian IP address. So that's clearly evident that the device is in India. So technically they tried to give some 7 conditions, of which they told if 2 are satisfied, then we treat that the location of recipient is deemed to be in taxable territory. That is, it is deemed to be in India. So come on, what is the first condition? Recipient gives an Indian address. Second, payment is settled by an Indian credit card, debit card or other card. Third, recipient has an Indian billing address. Fourth condition, the computer or other device used by the recipient has an Indian IP address. Fifth, recipient uses an Indian bank account for payment. So for the purpose of making payment, he has used Indian bank account. Next condition, the country code of the SIM card used by the recipient of services is in India, and generally India's country code is +91. So if 91 is appearing, that means that SIM card belongs to India. And let me tell you guys, SIM full form is Subscriber Identity Module. So if the country code of SIM card is of India, then finish, condition is satisfied. And finally, the last condition, recipient receives the service through an Indian fixed landline. So that's something like he has got one broadband connection or an internet connection fixed line which is there in India, and using that he has availed these services. So out of these 7 conditions, my dear friends, if any 2 are satisfied, then the location of recipient is deemed to be in taxable territory. So these are the points given by section 13, subsection 12, which deals with the concept of place of supply in relation to OIDAR services. So friends, finally it's time to talk about the last subsection in section 13, that is section 13, subsection 13. It's a very simple point which just says that place of supply in case of certain notified services shall be the place of effective use and enjoyment of service. In other words, wherever the service is effectively used and enjoyed, that becomes the place of supply. So friends, 1313 says simple line, what is that? For only notified services, it will be the place of effective use and enjoyment of service. And what are the notified services? As on today's date, a couple of services are notified. One is related to pharmaceutical sector, one is related to repairs and maintenance. So in those cases, they told place of supply is the place of effective use and enjoyment of service. And generally, it is effectively used and enjoyed by the recipient. And obviously, we end up saying that place of supply is location of recipient. Now, let's look at what are covered there. Now see, first, there are some services related to pharmaceutical sector, especially research and development services related to pharmaceutical sector, which are covered here. Number 1, integrated discovery and development. Next, integrated development, evaluation of efficacy of the new chemical or biological entities in animal models of disease. Then, evaluation of biological activity of novel chemical or biological entities in vitro assays. In vitro is something like outside the animal. Then, drug metabolism and pharmacokinetics of new chemical entities. Then, safety assessment or toxicology, and also stability studies, bioequivalence and bioavailability studies, clinical drugs, that is basically clinical trials where they do testing of the drug whatever is developed. Next, bioanalytical studies. So these are all basically research and development activities related to pharmaceutical sector, and they have specified that if supplier is located in India, recipient is located outside India, then straight away the place of supply is the location of recipient of service. And generally we say the transaction as export of service provided the payment is received in convertible foreign exchange or in Indian rupees wherever permitted by RBI. So this is an interesting R&D activity related to pharmaceutical sector which is covered in 1313, which says place of supply is the place of effective use and enjoyment of service. Then one more interesting service notified is, see now, supply of maintenance, repair or overhaul service in respect of aircraft, aircraft engines and other aircraft components or parts supplied to a person for use in the course or furtherance of business. So basically it's talking about maintenance, repair, overhaul service. In these cases also, place of supply is the place of effective use and enjoyment of service, which is nothing but the location of recipient of services. That's it. These are the interesting points which are notified in section 13, subsection 13. And as we already discussed, guys, section 12 has got 14 subsections and 13 has got 13 subsections. And section 14, as we just discussed some time back, deals with the provisions of what is the concept of OIDAR. That's it. Here ends the story of this beautiful topic known as place of supply, where we discussed about section 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. And we also figured out a lot of very interesting questions. At the same time, we discussed a lot of past exam questions which have come up in the exam. That's the end of story for this beautiful topic known as place of supply.